Welcome back to the Midnight Ride. I am your driver, Graveyard Graham. New episode of Daredevil. What even is this? Is this the fourth one or the fifth one? It's called Sic Semper Systema. There were great moments in this and bad moments in this. It all comes down to the writing. I said at the beginning, they set this out in the pilot episode, pilot premiere, whatever you want to call it. This is about Kingpin and Daredevil trying to set their alter egos aside and become different men, better men, successful within the system. And their struggle is to not revert to what they were before. Matt Murdock wants to believe that the justice system works, and Fisk wants to go straight, moving away from his criminal empire and into politics. Haha, funny. But that works for the story they're trying to tell. There are subplots along the way talking about the corruption of politics, the corruption of bad police officers, other vigilantes. There is a veiled reference to Spider-Man. There's also Punisher and the aforementioned White Tiger. White Tiger was on trial for killing a police officer, but it was an accident, and he didn't know that the cop was quote-unquote undercover, and the guy was beating up a CI anyway, so there were a lot of extenuating circumstances. At the end of the last episode, when White Tiger Hector Ayala was found not guilty, he goes out to patrol the streets, and then he gets executed by a guy wearing a Punisher t-shirt. And I said at the time that I wasn't convinced it was the Punisher, and that it fit Wilson Fisk's model of co-opting symbols and figures of his heroes to use, of not his heroes, but of superheroes to use against them. That's how he basically co-opted the entire persona of Daredevil in season 3 and put it on, what's his freaking name? Ben Poindexter, Dex, Bullseye, so that he could ruin Daredevil or at least control him in the eyes of Hell's Kitchen. I thought that he was doing the same there with Punisher. I didn't believe that it was actually Frank Castle who killed White Tiger because he had no reason to do so. The great moment in this episode came when Murdock was out looking for further evidence, on that case, because after they found White Tiger's body, they didn't find the casing of the bullet that killed him. So he goes out, uses the Daredevil senses, finds the bullet casing, and it's got a Punisher stamp on it. And so he goes to Frank and he's like, hey, I found this. What did you do? And he's like, I didn't do this. I've got fanboys. I've got dumb cops that wear the Punisher logo. There are more cracks appearing in this show where it's the writers using their current deisms and airing out their own politics through the writing. This is a reference to something in the real world, and that's that several years ago, there was a push amongst the lefties to try to sue anybody who was using a Punisher logo as a sticker on a truck, or police officers who used it or whatever, because they believed that the right wing had co-opted it. It's like, Frank Castle is just a character who has an unorthodox and unethical methodology for fighting crime, and that forms the crux of his entire split or argument with Daredevil. You believe in the system, but guys constantly beat the system and they get out and they commit more crimes. If we do it my way, I put him down forever. But his way is he finds people and then he just kills them. So, that's the methodology split. We'll call it a denominational difference. But that was definitely the writers showing through. They're like, oh, cops like the Punisher logo and they go out and kill people. And for extra sprinkling on top, Hector Ayala was Puerto Rican, and the cop that did this, who was old New York white. So they can't fight their worst tendencies, but in trying to examine this in a vacuum, if you were to take that out of it, would this still work in this fictional setting? There have been corrupt cops throughout Daredevil. In fact, that's part of the entire problem that he's up against, is that he wants to believe that the system works, and on paper it does. In practice, it often doesn't. A system is only as good as the people who administer it, and there are plenty of corrupt people in that system. Taken in a vacuum, that's part of the whole story and the point of the argument. And without that corrupt system, there's no need for somebody like Daredevil, who tries to make it work right, and when it doesn't, he goes out with a mask on and rights the ship. He wanted to believe that he was past that, because in the context of this show, him being Daredevil puts people close to him in danger. That's what gets Foggy killed. That's what drives Karen away. And here he is. So it works on that level, but it's annoying that you can see between the cracks and you can see the stuff that's still external to it. But the moment where he confronts Castle was just fantastic, and you can see that it challenged him. It was both actors kind of cutting loose, explaining who they are and what they do. Some of the worst moments, though, this is where the bad writing comes into play. Murdoch takes a case to defend a guy who doesn't have a lawyer and can't afford one, and he's charged with petty larceny for stealing some caramel corn. Excuse me. I've got to believe that Fiddle Faddle paid for some product placement in this episode, because that was the brand, and they managed to say it about 8 times. But I digress. He's a black guy, and he's getting hustled by cops for petty larceny, and he's trying to get out of, like, he wants probation. He doesn't want any community service or any jail time or whatever. And he's just being a bombastic a-hole. Like, the way that he's written and acted, you're not meant to like this guy. Matt's not able to get him probation. He's able to get him only 10 days in jail. And then the guy suddenly switches gears and he's got a sob story. He's like, well, the last time I was in jail, I missed a meeting for my food stamps, and they cut my benefits, and I got to eat out of the garbage now. And it's like, this is bad writing. The whole point of that scene was to get Murdoch to a place where his belief in the system cracks, so that he can start letting Daredevil out again. Because the episode ends on a scene where he's training as Daredevil up on the roof again. I understand that you needed to get there. They picked a very crappy way of writing to do that. If you can see the script through the holes in the writing, that is bad writing. Why didn't this guy explain beforehand, hey, if I do this, I'll miss my benefits meeting or whatever. Like, that's information he should have divulged ahead of time. Otherwise, it just makes him look like another guy with a sob story who didn't do nothing, and the system is just against me. The title of the episode, Sic Semper Systema, is implicit in that. At no point does Matt just say, like, why don't you stop committing crimes? Why haven't you gotten a job? None of that. You're never allowed to ask that questions in these scenarios, because it's always the system. The perpetrator is just a good boy who didn't do nothing. He's always kept his nose clean. The system is just out hunting brown people. It's like, there's never any examination of that. I understand, once again, like, in the vacuum, the story the writers are trying to tell, like, it ends with him becoming Daredevil again, but they are picking a very poor way of writing to get there. And that's where there's going to be a flaw. Another thing that popped up, I kind of got annoyed that they introduced White Tiger right away. You didn't really get to see him in action before they killed him off, and you can immediately tell them that they're setting up his niece to inherit his amulet, which is the source of his powers, strength and speed and whatever. By the end of this series, we're going to see her inherit her uncle's effects, and she's going to be White Tiger. I'm not tremendously familiar with this character. I've got no particular affinity toward it. I do know that there are about 5 different White Tigers in Marvel continuity. We'll see what they do. The brief glimpses that we got of this guy were pretty cool, and it was teasing more, and, like, now he's dead. It's like, okay, gosh, like, it'd be cool to see more of, it would have been cool to see more of Hector Ayala as White Tiger, whatever. So there were a couple of good moments and great moments and really downer moments in the writing on this one. It was a bit all over the place, but it's taking you where you need to go, so that when the series season finale, whatever, I think they just renewed it for season 2. I don't know. When the season finale hits and it's going to be Daredevil versus Kingpin again, it'll be cool and epic, and you'll get some of the screenshots that you want. Final note, what's the other thing going on in this episode? Kingpin and his wife are in marriage counseling because once again, like the writers are trying to rehab what was done with the Kingpin character in the Hawkeye and Echo shows, and so they wrote it up as like, well, you disappeared for a while, and she didn't know if you were coming back, and she started having an affair with another guy, and in the first episode, like she asks Wilson, don't kill him, and Wilson's like, I won't, I promise, and in the marriage counseling, like they talk about the affair that she had, and all of Fisk says is like, yeah, I went and talked to him. We had a dialogue, and he left. And the counselor's like, well, where is he now? And both of them are like, oh, I don't know. And then at the end, it's revealed that Fisk has this guy in prison, and he's like kind of torturing him. It's all in service of this quest to put Kingpin and Daredevil back in their costumes and back fighting each other and kind of rectify the old Netflix show into the MCU. We'll see how it lands by the end. I enjoyed the great moments. The bad moments showed their rear ends, and we'll see how it goes from there. I guess there's been some brouhaha about how they're completely removing Daredevil's Catholicism. There were references to it in the pilot episode. It hasn't really come up since, but there hasn't been room for it in the story as of yet. They could have put it in, and I don't know if it doesn't pop up again by the end of the series. I'll probably revisit that idea. They haven't removed it; it just hasn't, I guess, like needed to come up. But we'll see by the end if his faith plays a role in the character coming back. Anyway, those are my thoughts on this most recent episode. Drive safe. See you out there.